want
collaborative.
if you want a simple answer on will I support building a pipeline, yes, that simple answer. I've given that multiple times. But I don't stop at that. And we will change things at the federal level that need to be changed in order for projects to move forward.
Does that include C-69 or the emissions cap?
Yeah, it could include both.
Prime Minister Mark Carney in a CTV News exclusive interview committing to pipeline production, as you heard there, even putting some of Justin Trudeau's marquee climate policies on the potential chopping block. Bill C-69, legislation which outlines federal powers to approve natural resource projects, and the federal emissions cap on oil and gas. But this morning, on the way into cabinet, Minister Steven Guilbeault, who oversees now national identity, threw cold water on the idea.
Prime Minister last night on TV seemed to open the door to potentially changing the emissions cap or the IAA to get projects built. What do you think of what he said?
Well, these are important conversations that we will need to have in the coming weeks. As far as I know, there are no investors right now. There are no companies that are saying that they want to build an east-west pipeline. And as you know, these things are built by companies, not governments.
So what challenges could the Prime Minister face to make good on his pledge to turn Canada into an energy superpower? Let's bring in our front bench. Sharon Carr is the former Deputy Chief of Staff to former Finance Minister Bill Morneau. She's now a partner at Sovereign Advisory. Jamie Ellerton is a Conservative strategist and the founder and principal of Canaptus. Graham Richardson is the Managing Director of Media at Edelman, and Nick Nanos is founder and Chief Data Scientist at Nanos Research. Hi, everybody. Such a pleasure to see you. Nick, I got to ask you, like it took 12 hours or something for Minister Guilbeault, who used to helm, most famously or infamously environment, to kind of throw cold water on what the Prime Minister was pretty explicit about in our interview. What do you take from that?
Well, I think obviously if you're a Liberal cabinet minister under Mark Carney, you feel comfortable enough to voice your views, even if your leader, who happens to be the Prime Minister, who brought the Liberals back from their deathbed, disagrees with you. So it'll be interesting to see, what other cabinet ministers have to say, and how Mark Carney, his leadership style, which is obviously very different from the previous leader, Justin Trudeau.
It's not new, Graham, to have different views on whether or not there should be more pipelines around the Liberal cabinet table, right? We saw that certainly during the Trudeau era. We're not sure exactly what the balance is in this one, but we do know more, I think, explicitly where the Prime Minister stands than we did with Prime Minister Trudeau. Does that make a difference?
I think it does make a difference, but the most important minister is the Prime Minister. When he sits on television and all through the campaign, virtually every day, talking about replacing Quebec's oil consumption with Alberta oil, including conventional, I don't think he's making it up. The Conservative story on Mr. Carney is very Roger Daltrey. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss, right? You like that?
Yeah, that's good.
So, and the Liberal story is, no. I am not Justin Trudeau. I'm going to run this my way. So I think allowing ministers to say what they want to say, Guilbeault's comments aren't nearly as important as Mark Carney's. And I don't think he can just, as you know, I know why you were asking those questions. You're hearing from Alberta that these are a bunch of leave it in the grounders yet again. And
to be fair, he wrote a book where he wasn't like, let's drill, baby, drill.
No, that's right. That's right. And so I think it's a legitimate question, but I think he has been also quite clear that this is a new approach, including, and that pipelines are a possibility. And Guilbeault's right. You do need the private sector to build a pipeline. But
well, not if it's TMX.
Not if you're true. Well, they started it and then he bought it,
Just
right?
a little bit pricey at $34 billion. Sharon, you advised former Finance Minister Bill Morneau during the whole TMX stuff. How big of a deal do you think it is that there is not consensus around the cabinet table, that you have Minister Guilbeault saying that? Does it ultimately sway what the Prime Minister does one way or the other?
No, I don't think it's going to be a shocker to anyone that Minister Guilbeault's perspective on pipelines hasn't shifted overnight. And as a very pro-oil Liberal who will tell you, drill, baby, drill, I got to say, Prime Minister Carney was very clear during the campaign. He was extremely clear when he said he is willing to look at projects that are nation-building. And pipelines are nation-building projects. We've heard Premier Legault not too long ago say that the social license and acceptance in Quebec is starting to shift, and a lot of this has to do with what Donald Trump has done and built this unity in Canada. So Mr. Guilbeault can do whatever he wants, say whatever he wants, but at the end of the day, Prime Minister Mark Carney is the one who's going to make the final decision. And, you know, he might vote against it, he could vote for it, but it doesn't matter because we're in a different time, we're in a different place, and sometimes you have to adapt your policies. And if it means we got to do some drilling, let's do some drilling.
Do you think, Jamie, it is all that different? I take Sharon's point certainly around public opinion or popular opinion around pipelines. But I would point out, even in Quebec, where Premier Legault says that, exactly what Sharon pointed out, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, Yves-François Blanchet, on day one said, yeah, I'm willing to have a truce with the Liberals as long as they, like, I'm paraphrasing, but don't go near oil and gas.
Yeah, I think there's obviously going to be a gulf here. I think if you look at where Mark Carney started his public profile back in January to where he is now, on this very show, I actually used to say Mark Carney campaign was not as strong as Mark Carney on a microphone. I think he's very quickly grown into the role. I watched his sit down with you yesterday. And this is a man who was answering questions in a level of specificity and engaging with questions in a way that we've not seen from political leaders in quite some time. And I think the rest of his cabinet, who he inherited from the previous government, a lot of them, like Minister Guilbeault, are getting caught up with their new reality. I think the curious thing for me coming out of yesterday, given that he just swore his cabinet in, is that they were not ready for prime time and not ready to actually answer questions. Why do you have them in front of media? And why is the Minister for essentially Canadian Heritage, whatever they're calling it now, talking about the economy and pipelines? He should have said, I'll leave that question for the Minister of Infrastructure and the Minister of Natural Resources, rather than creating news contradicting the Prime Minister. So I think it's probably a good thing that we have a culture in Ottawa that kind of loosens and let people have more free conversations. I think it's actually better for our democratic discourse. But for a government literally launching after this campaign and on the day of their cabinet swearing in to have cabinet ministers essentially stepping all over the Prime Minister's message, it's not a good look, and it's definitely fodder for the opposition parties to jump on.
I wanted to ask, because I'm going to defend the practice as Jamie's very smart from a strategic perspective, but I love that they're just all talking all the time. And it's something Mark Carney said would be the reality, right? He said yesterday, cabinet ministers are going to be, able to make decisions in a way perhaps that they weren't before. The reality of that, as Jamie points out, might not be exactly as pictured.
I know, but Vash, you think of it this way. How long has it been since there hasn't been the highly concentrated, why don't we just call it the PMO iron fist or thumb that has been put, whether it's Stephen Harper or Justin Trudeau, put on cabinet ministers where everything has been completely controlled. Maybe I think this comes to a different style of leadership. You know, Mark Carney probably knows, can't run the whole government. Everybody knows
it's coming.
Or
it's coming. The iron fist is coming. It's day one.
It'll come when something blows up, right?
Yeah.
Right, Graham? Something will go wrong, and then it'll be like, okay, the leash is on, right? It'll be kind of, they'll be
been a day. It's been one day.
Yeah, it's been a day. And Graham, I'll give you the last word on this. Like, I guess the question is there space? Is there the media environment for that difference, those kinds of contradictions without us immediately going to, well, that person needs to get kicked out of cabinet, or that, like, I'm very curious. I don't know the answer to it, but it'll be interesting.
And I think time will tell. I do think that it's very, very early days. He's in his honeymoon phase. And I think that if I'll put it this way, if it gets in the way of actually doing something to demonstrate he's the new boss, the old control will come back in a nanosecond.
Wouldn't it have been funny to be in that meeting with Guilbeault saying, congratulations, you're the minister responsible for Canadian identity? Yeah. Right? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What about pipelines?
I got to take a quick break.